Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, garbage, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right.
So we had a little delay this morning. We had to get the list together because the list is so long. I mean, I can't remember
it. Yeah, it's one thing if it's like four things, but how many is that? It's like 8 or 9 or whatever it is. I don't know. It's ridiculous.
But those kind of show you, like, their whole thing was name calling, and apparently the American people have graduated from 7th grade and moved on.
Yeah, it's amazing what we've learned over the years and everything. So before we get into all the issues and stuff like that, they often discussed weather. So this is an interesting thing now because we actually have wildfires on both coasts. That's pretty unusual. I mean, and we've talked about, I think we touched upon this before, about how dry it's been here. We got a little bit of rain. What was it? Friday, Saturday, over the weekend,
Monday, Sunday,
yeah,
Sunday night, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they're calling for some more rain maybe coming down there, but these conditions have been really bad as you get up into Massachusetts and areas like that, and they're fighting back some fires, things that they're not used to seeing on California. They have a lot of issues and they see a lot of wildfires, and they have a whole management system and firefighting system to try to contain that. And but out when you're coming out east, that's a whole new ball game. This not happening,
especially this time of year. So people position those assets for the summer, right? Once they, what happens there, I can tell you as a golfer, like, this is like clockwork, right? So you get it like late September, early October, you get a big rainstorm, and the ground never really gets hard again. It's soft the rest of the winter, right? Until it gets hot again in the summer. And, the ground's hard still. The golf ball is still bouncing and bouncing because it's, not that I'm getting to hit them very often, but it's, the ground's dry. The ground's, it's the color of dry, wherever you are. So, it's been a really dry fall here. It's also been, real pleasant temperatures. I've had to be outside at night a lot for like football games and stuff. And, your light jacket is all you need. There's no teeth chattering too much going on. So, Marty's season's over. And I think the coldest, it was maybe in the mid 40s for one of the games. But, that's pretty good for Northern Virginia. That's a pretty good run at it.
Yeah, I noticed actually that Magruder High School up the street is actually in a playoff game.
Yeah, that's right. So like I used to cover sports in Montgomery County, right? And Magruder winning football was very good at basketball. They won a state tournament when I was doing it, right? The great Dan Harwood, who's the best high school coach I've ever covered in any sport in any location. He is the number one guy. It's weird. Like, the time I was in Montgomery County, it's like, I don't want to bore people that aren't into all this, but I was a sports writer in Louisiana, Maryland, and Virginia. And, there's some good high school sports in those areas, right? Did a little bit of Texas when I was in Louisiana. So you see some good teams, you see some good players, right? But the two best coaches I've ever seen were in the 3 years I was sports editor in Montgomery. The best overall coach in any sport was Harwood, and the best football coach was Terry Changuras. And I know that, people talk about Bob Malloy and all those guys, and Bob Malloy's a great coach too, but Terry Changuras did it with nothing. He did it with whoever walked through the school door, and, made them into a team. And, in the decade of the 90s, Seneca Valley, where he was the coach, they were 110-12 with 6 state champions. They won their last 39 games of the decade. At that time, that's pretty remarkable by itself. But at that time in Virginia, there were only 3 rounds of playoffs. So the most games you could play in a season was 130. Right? I mean, it was 13. So the most you could play in a decade is 130. So they were 8 games from maxing it, from being in the state title every year, right? So, I mean, that's a remarkable decade of football.
So as Tony Reale from Around the Horn would love that. He's, he
Yep.
was Stat Boy, how he started out, before he became what he is today.
I've
That's
coached
great because
softball against that guy, and he is an absolutely amazing athlete. He gets on first. You can put a run in your scorebook. He gets around the bases. It's unbelievable how good he is, Tony Reale.
yeah, I mean he loves stats, and
Yeah.
you just pulled off an around the horn stat there to be able to have that in your memory bank like that. I mean, yeah, look, Seneca Valley was just just ridiculous powerhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, I came from the late 70s. Northwood High School, where they had a bit of a run, there for a while and stuff like that. But when you look at Seneca Valley, and then to some extent, I think didn't Damascus and Pools will have some success.
Yeah. Damascus had some success. Sherwood's had some success.
Yeah.
Sherwood had Malloy until he went to
Right.
good
Right.
so.
Again, and when Malloy was at Springbrook, they were very good.
Yeah, that's right.
And also when Northwest cropped up, it kind of siphoned off
Yeah,
some of the Seneca Valley kids and everything
that's
like
right.
that, and they became good. And so all of a sudden, you just had a bunch of pretty darn good teams and a lot
Yeah.
of darn good coaches.
Yeah. Now it's Quince Orchard.
Wasn't it like Al Thomas?
Yeah, Al Thomas was at Gaithersburg and he was at Damascus. He was
Yeah.
a great coach.
Yeah. So
John Harville at Gaithersburg.
Yeah, John Harville.
And now Quince Orchard with John
Right.
Kelly, who was at Seneca Valley when they were making that 110-12 run. John Kelly was on those teams. His brother Chris was the quarterback.
So there's a coaching tree out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all that. Yeah, but when you talk about the ground being hard, so my thing with the ground being hard is that I've had, been trying to blow the leaves into this ditchy area and hope, basically over the winter and whatever, they kind of decompose and I can start all over again next fall. But when I was, I don't think I've done anything for about a week now, but the last time I was out there, which was, and the same had happened for the previous times I've been out there, every time I blow these leaves off my yard into the ditchy area, kind of thing like this, it's like a dust storm.
Yeah,
That's right. And that actually hasn't happened before to my recollection. I've been doing this for years, and I don't recall ever where I'm blowing the stuff around, and I'm like, I almost need like a mask or something like that. So I was kind of, a little bit of rain to tamp it down a little bit would actually be nice to be able to blow leaves, just kind of like just after the rain, there's some of it dried off a little bit, but not dried out, and then blow everything back. And then I don't just get this, Dust Bowl era kind of look around there and everything. So yeah, no, it has been very, very dry, covers our cars, it's just it's kind of crazy the way the weather has been that way. But as you said, it's been generally nice. Though I will say, we get days like this morning. I leave at the house at 4:30 in the morning, and so to go to the gym, and when it was about 34, so it's a little bit chilly. But here's the thing: so in my current medical condition, the thing is that I'm the guy who used to have to bundle up a lot, but I really can't do that. So I'm actually wearing lighter line jackets and stuff like that. I'm trying to find the happy medium where I don't actually just burn up in the car, and so,
like in the winter, like I'm going in and out of gyms, right? And so once you get in the gym, it's hot. So you don't want to be stuck with your heavy coat, sitting there. And, so, I mean, I've spent a lot of time trying to get the very lightest thing I can have that, I don't freeze when I'm outside and I can manage it when I'm inside.
I used to bundle up in the house because I keep this house stays at a relatively cool temperature, but that's actually reasonably comfortable for me right now. So, and then I've got my poor wife who's like using, a Vornado electric heater where she sits to stay warm, because it's kind of like, well, it's probably better if I just warm myself over here, and then you don't get hot where you are and stuff like that. And it's like, it's just one of those things. Getting old for me really has kind of sucked in a lot of ways, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
You know,
there's some good about it. You sleep
yeah,
less. You don't need all that sleep anymore.
yeah. I mean, there's just, I don't know how people sleep 8 hours because I can't do it.
I
I
can't do it either.
I cannot do it. So, if somebody's got some secrets to sleeping longer when you're older, let me know. But
Yeah,
I'm lucky if I get 6.5 hours,
yeah, that's right.
in. So, yeah, that's what happens when you got a bunch of old guys.
That's right.
Um, all right, we'll start with overseas here. So we had these attacks on soccer students in Amsterdam.
That's right.
They were there supporting the Maccabi team, and these people were running around attacking Jewish students, yelling IDF, IDF, and everything like that. I mean, it is once again, this is born out of all the conflict in the Middle East. But this, I don't. I guess I wasn't really expecting it. I don't think that I don't think the people, the police in Amsterdam, were necessarily expecting that either. That how the tensions had boiled over there. Uh, but they've been trying to control it. But it just shows you. I mean, we've got Trump coming into office. I mean, hopefully these kinds of things, won't happen, right? That's what we're
Right.
counting on, and is anything like this would just not happen, right?
Right. Well, I mean, last time he was president, kind of the whole world tilted a little more to the right, to respond to it, right? He's a force of nature, right? Whether you like that force or not, he is a force of nature. And the other thing is, like, since then, the EU has careened pretty far to the left, right? They've cut themselves off from their energy. They have opened their borders for immigration. They're giving a lot of money and assistance to illegal immigrants who are changing the face of their countries. They are moving into censorship in a big and meaningful way. Right, a lot of and anytime something moves left, it becomes more racist. Right, the whole thing of leftism is categorize, put people in boxes. You're a white, you're a male, you're a this, you're a that. Right, instead of you being yourself, a person with your own dignity and your own views and your own that. Right, and that's the way Europe is going right now, and this is a product of that. And so the next thing you will see, I believe, is some backlash against that, because what happened last time is voters there felt empowered, right? It was like, we too can overthrow the sclerotic, mean-spirited style of leadership and get our own Trump, get our own way out of this, get our own new thinking on these problems.
Yeah, I mean, and we have seen there have been pockets of that populism throughout Europe, where these lefties have been, they've just, it's been enough for, for in some of these countries, they said that's enough. They've managed to find the votes and win elections, and kind of change the tenor and the tone of things like that. But this brings a question to my mind, though, with these left wingers, and we've just seen the German government collapsed, right? Olaf Scholz, he's probably, I guess he's going to have to call an election by February or something like that. That may not go well. His coalition just fizzled away. But I wonder whether or not some of the lefty movements, some of these things, we saw a lot of this stuff that has happened over the last few years. Is this a result of these lefties looking at Biden coming to office, thinking that they had 4 years, if not at least 8 years, of Democrat control here, and that they would get friendly policies? America was going to sign on to every left-wing kooky thing, international treaty and whatever going on there, and so that they were basically all on the same page.
Right.
Also, because Biden had pretty much handed over a lot of these things like environmental policy and a lot of things to the left here. So they were all kind of working together. Now we see, Trump getting elected, there's going to be a radical shift.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Yeah, and it's going to have a lot of effects. It's like one guy's in big trouble over it is Trudeau in Canada, right? They could lose every district, or what do they call them, like ridings? Anyway, they could lose them all. They could get blanked in this election. That they're in that bad a shape. And so, he's almost certainly going to be out of office in a few months.
Yeah, and I mean, even though that Keir Starmer, Labour won in Great Britain, this year, that one I think was just it was just poor management on the part of the Tories. They did a horrible job,
Right, and they can win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. Right. Yeah.
That's right. So
Trudeau. I think the number is finally up for him.
Yeah, I do too.
He's had a target on his back, and they haven't been able to quite do it yet. But I think
I think that it's in for some big change in Canada when this happens, dude. I think there is pent up real frustration what's been going on there, and how the country's just kind of sunk into mediocrity or worse. And there's a real appetite for fixing it, for changing it.
Yeah. But that's going to be part of the key, though. Just like it is with any election almost anywhere, is that the party in power, that if they regain power or whatever, or they retain, they need to actually show that they're doing something, that they're going to fix something.
That's right.
Not chase their own private agendas, but actually do something that put the things that put them into office. You better act on that, because particularly with parliamentary elections, things can go, south in a hurry.
Yeah. So, one thing I was thinking about, like our presidential election, right? Yeah, that's right. That's right. And fingers crossed. In our election, our sentences were action verbs. Their sentences were be verbs, right? Trump is a fascist, right? We're saying we're gonna fix this. We're gonna fix that. Right. Now, anytime you have a big, long list of proposals, some of those proposals are not going to be great. Right. You're going to have to rethink or whatever. But like, we're talking about fixing things. They're talking about Trump is a fascist. Right. All his followers are evil people. Right. So they are, they're not, they're gonna. Right. Their whole thing was be verbs, and they got what they deserved.
Yeah. No, they're really smarting over this. I mean, the finger pointing and kind of the caterwauling and just all these things about who's to blame for this, that, and the other. It's interesting to see how who's supposed to be taking the blame. There, blame has been put on to Biden. Blame has been put on to Harris. There are others that say that it isn't either one of them. It's just it's voters staying home, and it's not Harris's fault. But come on, I mean, okay, officially, Biden received 81 million votes, right, 4 years ago. This time around, Harris. Remember, that's why I'm saying officially.
I understand. I hear you.
I know not everybody buys into that, but those are the official numbers that are recorded in the books.
Right. That's right.
But they are what they are.
I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying. Trump yes, there are questions about that number, but yeah, that's the number.
Yeah, and Trump had less. Trump had what, like 74,
75.
Yeah. So now.
Now he has like 79.
Trump has exceeded the previous vote total. So he's now received more votes as a Republican president than anyone in history, right? Because he's already done that the last time.
He set that record.
Yeah, right. He just keeps breaking his own record, right? And then this time it's enough to win officially, and plus the electoral vote, which came in very well for him. But
and plus the House and Senate,
right? And so, Harris is there at, maybe, they're still counting, and, they're still counting some votes, but where Harris is what, 71, maybe 70. There are, you could arguably say, I mean, there are like 9 to 10 million votes that disappeared, which leads you to a lot of questions as to exactly what happened. I am not going to go down any conspiracy rabbit hole or anything like that, but did that many people really stay home? I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. It's amazing that you can go from that number to this number. That is a significant drop off. And if you're saying that there were no shenanigans 4 years ago, and these numbers are real on both ends, then you got to say, how do you not blame Kamala Harris and the Democrat, her campaign, for losing, that many votes?
I keep reading these things. She ran a fantastic campaign, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. Okay, they blew through 1.5 billion in about 110 days. Right? They paid Beyonce more than $1 million. They paid all these people to show up and talk for 5 minutes for her, these movie stars. I think they paid her 10 million, right? Beyonce was 10 million. A couple of other them were 7 million, 5 million. I think Eminem got 2 million, right? I mean, you're giving people money to walk up there and say they like her, who've already endorsed her. I mean, Beyonce, was there any question that Beyonce was going to vote for Trump? No, we all knew who she was going to vote for. So you paid her $10 million to walk out on the stage in Houston for 3 minutes and give a talk. Right. So they blew a lot of money on things that didn't produce a lot of votes. They blew a lot of money on their social media influencer team, which is most of the people are just viscerally obnoxious and don't win any votes for you. Right. They preach to the choir, but no one says, oh, well, Harry Sisson or Brooklyn Dad Defiant or any of these clowns are, right. So I'm going to cross over to them. They didn't have her, the interviews they put her in, they had to pull her out of. Remember, they had to pull her off Brett Baer early. The Dana Bash was a disaster. There was, an hour and a half of interview and they showed 19 minutes and, they switched her answers on 60 Minutes because she was so bad at it, and then they won't release what she really said, which kind of tells you everything you need to know. They didn't really have a good candidate, right? I mean, she was somebody who was a vice president, and she was fine as a vice president, I guess. But they didn't really have a frontline candidate, right? And they got caught with their pants down when Trump destroyed Biden in the debate, and they had to make a move, right? So they made a move and whatnot. But the campaign itself, right? And then you come up and you say, like you say, they're 10 to 12 to 15 million votes short. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so where did the 10 or 12 million votes go? Why didn't you turn them out? If it's not corruption, if you didn't stuff the ballot boxes in 2020, and the explanation is those voters never existed anyway, which is what I suspect a lot of it is, then you didn't turn them out. Like, you let 10 million voters sit home in an election that you have to win, biggest election ever, got to keep the threat of the fascist and all his people out of office, right? So, they didn't do it. They didn't do the job of running a campaign.
Yeah, I mean, see, the problem for me is just that, okay, I accepted that Joe Biden was elected president. I mean, we're not going to overturn. I mean, that is history. That's all done. But when you look at the previous votes for president for the Democrats, his was so much higher than what Hillary and Obama and all these others had been there. It was a dramatic increase.
Yeah, and he'd done so much less to earn it.
Right.
I mean, he had not gone, they get on Hillary for not going to Wisconsin. He didn't go anywhere. He stayed in his basement.
Right. I mean, he gets all those votes and he didn't do diddly squat. So where Kamala is, she has received more votes than Hillary and some of the others, right? So now her vote totals actually, if they kind of line up. I mean, if the totals for Trump are increasing, it would make sense that the Democrats are going to get some more votes too. So they both, come the rising tide. So both sides were getting more votes, but not significantly more like that, not that huge jump that they had. I mean, I think Hillary had 69 million and Biden goes to 81 million.
Yeah.
That's significant.
66 million. He had 63. So it's even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
15 million more people voted for Biden than, the first woman president, former ambassador, former senator, the perfect, the most qualified candidate ever. Right.
Yeah.
Biden got 15 million votes more than the most qualified candidate ever. right?
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. That's what they want us to believe, right? Like you say, we're not equipped as a country, really. I think the Republicans did a good job this year of fighting corruption, right? They had people, like they had that carload of people driving around Pennsylvania stamping out all the crooked stuff that was going on election day, right? So they kind of served notice. If you cheat this time, there's a lot better chance we'll see you and know about it. Now, you have some trucks that pulled up on, some trucks that pulled up on Eric Hovde, right? And he wants to go look at the trucks, right? But now we've seen the trucks. The trucks are on film. They're going to have to explain that, right? And no one's taken office yet, so it can still be unwound, right? We're not doing Texas v. Pennsylvania when it's too late, right? It's certified or whatever, right? These things haven't happened yet. You can still police it. I don't know if he has the votes. I don't know what's going on there, but he could, right? And it does look like some suspicious stuff happened. So part of it was the Republicans were really aggressive about stopping it this time. And I think the Democrats are kind of like, okay, prison is prison, and if they win, that's where we'll be. So, I think that was a good move on their part, probably helped them some, especially in places like Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And I may have said this last week, because one of my fears going into the election was just that, after the midterms, I was concerned about abortion was going to fuel, the Democrat vote, and it didn't at all. I mean,
right.
the measures passed in a lot of states.
It failed in some states.
But it failed in a few states. But in the end, it didn't really help Harris. It
right.
wasn't a defining issue for the Democrats this time around. So, people looking at Harris, she was definitely a flawed candidate. To Bob's point about clawing back, maybe the Harris campaign should have written something into their little contract to pay these guys and say, this payment is a contingency basis based on how well we did. If we don't win, we get most of this back. You get a nominal appearance. You get a nominal appearance fee.
I don't think Beyonce's rolling out on a deal like that, bro.
Yeah, they're probably like, what? No way. No, it's not gonna happen.
No, I'm very busy that day.
But like the call her daddy thing, right? They spent I saw
$1 million on that.
They built a set.
Yeah, they built a set, and and she had 6,000 listeners or something. Yeah, that's right. I was about to talk about that. So, abortion was the telltale issue for about 5% of voters before Roe. After Roe, it went up to about 15 to 17%. Now it's back to about 9 or 10. So, it's on its way back to where it was. There'll be a few more people involved now that weren't involved before, but they're on both sides, right? There's a few more people out defending it now too.
Yeah, I mean, to me, after Roe v. Wade, once the line was basically really the state should decide. So we started to see state ballot measures, right? Referendums and whatnot to do this. And so that's been happening. They're defeated in some states. They've won in other states. So it was codified. Well, you have 50 states theoretically you could do that in. Once you do that, one way or the other, what do you have? You don't. How do you get the vote out for abortion? At that point, because you've spent all this energy saying we have to codify this into the state constitution. Okay, so you win that battle, and then what happens to those voters? Do they care anymore at that point? Probably not, because it's not a hot button issue in their daily lives. And so I think it had kind of this little rush right after Roe v. Wade. Now I think we're seeing at the results of this election that it's probably not going to be the big issue that the Democrats thought it could. And they thought they could use this with a woman, who Kamala Harris talked about a woman's right to choose and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't go well. It just didn't really light a fuse under people for doing this at all. So, the very idea that you can't blame Harris for the loss on this is just so ludicrous on the face of it, and we had, I remember, I saw reports of people thinking like, okay, look, it's a short election cycle from the time that Harris jumped into the race, but that may give her an advantage, to go ahead and do that, right? She avoided a lot of the contentions, the primaries and stuff like that. She is, they basically anoint her as the candidate, the nominee, and she can just hit the ground running. They took in all this money. You mentioned all the money that came in, and it still didn't do any good. So then they go back and they say, well, she didn't have enough time. I'm like, come on.
Had plenty of time. That wasn't really, in fact, that was an advantage for her because, it was less time for her to schedule interviews that she couldn't handle, right? Like, hey, we don't have time for that. We got 52 rallies today, and time's running out before the election. So, I mean, she ended up doing maybe 5 or 6 at the most substantive interviews, right? Trump's doing this every day. He's doing town halls 2 or 3 times a week, right? You can ask him anything you want, and people ask him all kind of really hostile questions, right? She couldn't handle it coming from regular people, and she definitely couldn't handle it coming from reporters, right? And you could see them like they're trying to help her, right? They don't want Trump to win, but they couldn't help her, right? And you can see the tone of their voice. Like if you go watch like Dana Bash, you go watch the guy on 60 Minutes, like Bill Whitaker, you can see that their tone change as they realize they got somebody who's not that level of person, right? And there's no denying it. It's there on the camera, the I don't lie. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that they made a terrible mistake, and I think that they are about to pay for that mistake.
Yeah, as I've said before on the program, my wife has jumped in on watching all kinds of stuff on YouTube and a wide variety of things, but she watches a lot of, Megyn Kelly and a bunch of other things that kind of, once you start watching certain things like that, you get fed other things, along the way. And, and there are a lot of Black conservatives that got YouTube channels and we're commenting and talking about Trump and Harris during the campaign. I look at my wife. I think she's really evolved over these, since Trump, first got elected to now, where she was kind of the lukewarm, Trump person to a very much all in Trump person. She's well in the MAGA line, where I'm not. She's seen enough. Victor Davis Hanson. She loves what Victor Davis Hanson says. It just reinforces her beliefs on these things, and it's just interesting to see. And I think that's what's happened is that we saw that Trump. She's been impressed with Trump's tireless efforts on the campaign trail, just one after the other. Talk about how many he does. And look at this, Joe Rogan. Where was it? 45 million views, I think, plus another 10 or 20 on Spotify. A huge opportunity that Harris basically passed out, right?
Right. And then what I loved was like, Rogan said, we do this show here. It's a studio thing. I don't want to move that stuff all over the country. Come here, spend your 3 hours, move on, right? She was in Houston like a few days before all this, right? She could have just bopped over there and done it, right? She didn't want to do it because that's a platform she really could not have handled, right? Freewheeling, the questions are unpredictable. 3 hours, you got to sit there, right? They tried to get it down to 1 hour and get him to move and go do it wherever she was, make it convenient on her. And all this, you saw these leftists on the Twitter. If you're a radio host and you get asked by the vice president, I think that was true. I think people were looking for some kind of hope that like things would get better, and that pretty much. She's like, I don't even know, I don't even know what to do next.
I have no idea what I would do differently.
No idea what I'm doing here. I think Charlton's absolutely right about that. But so she could. The leftists are all on Twitter. Like, you pick your stuff up and you go to that vice president. That's what you do. And it's like, no, you don't. Right? It's not up to him to help her campaign. It's up to her to make these choices. And she made a choice there. And she, people will take issue with this probably, but it was probably the right choice for her to not go on Rogan because that, she could not have survived that format. That would have been really, really damaging for her.
Yeah, I mean, probably was, but it's just I was reading the Wall Street Journal and they talked about Trump and what they called the manosphere and how much he was propelled by the manosphere. It was interesting to see that. I mean, he really kind of got into those bros, these guys, and they, he got a lot of people just attracted to what he was saying, what he was doing. JD Vance went on Rogan, and he was good. They did a really good job of hitting a lot of these podcasts that hit that younger male segment.
Here's the thing, though. They're telling you all that to cover up the real problem. Okay, the real problem is this. Yes, married men went for Trump by 18 points. Single men went for Trump by 6-8 points, something like that. Married women went for Trump by 4 points. Unmarried women went for Harris by like 22 points. Okay, I may have some of those numbers a little off one way or the other, but the only thing she's winning is unmarried women. All the rest of them, it's not dudes. It's like all the rest of it is, people who are unhappy with their life, for her. The people who, saw a way out of this and to make things better went for him.
All right. So I'm pulling up like the NBC exit polling. So by marital status, says married men 60% for Trump, married women 51% for Trump, non-married men 49% for Trump, and non-married women 38% for Trump. So Trump was doing very, very well, in areas. I mean, I think that stunned the Democrats. They weren't really expecting to see that at all.
And lots better with young people than they thought.
Yeah, the young people. Let me see here real quick. I think it's up here. I think they broke it down. So if you have age, young 18 to 24-year-old males, 42% for Trump, 25, 29, 45% for Trump. You got 30 to 39, you got 46, 40 to 49. That's where Trump 50%, 50 to 64, 56%, 65 and older, 49%. He stayed with it enough. That's the thing, is that he did well enough that he kept any of those gaps close, if not winning them. And it makes a big difference in terms of how this was going to turn out. The traditional groups that the Democrats were looking at, they lost a chunk of the Latino vote and the black vote, and I know Democrats were kind of worried about that, and it really did come to pass that Trump, was just getting, a chunk of this and enough of those votes that made the difference. You don't win those swing states unless you hit those margins.
Right. Right. So what he did is they cut the margin a little bit everywhere. Every county in the country moved to the right in this election. All of them, all 3,100 of them. Right. Every state moved to the right. The blue states moved to the right more than the red states.
We saw states that were not competitive before. Because Trump's campaign and their effort, they made it. They did better than a Republican has done there in a long, long time. Right. You're just like, was it going to flip? Probably not. But it also helps down ballot and all of that. There's a lot of other things that it does.
Why he took the House, and it's why they held the House, and it's why he won the popular vote. Yeah, that's true too. They were all in on this border bill, that the Langford bill. Okay, and we've talked about this before. They say, "Oh, it's a bipartisan bill that Trump killed." No, it wasn't. No one asked MAGA what they thought, and the way we know that did not one bit reflect MAGA priorities. Right? It was about hiring more judges and lawyers to process immigrants into the country quicker. It was not about shutting the door and keeping them out until they prove asylum. Right? It was the opposite of what we were trying to get. They didn't ask us, so they got a bill that didn't reflect our opinion, and then lo and behold, we didn't support it. You can blame that all on Trump, but it's not Trump's fault. They tried to run a con on that, and we stopped them. And it may have taken Trump to step up and say, "Hey, Congress, they're running a game on you here, right? They're bending you over here. You got to get out of this, right?" And so, he got him out of it. And I think that's what a lot of people in Congress said. Okay, you know what? He's right. He doesn't know what he's doing. So, I think that, we have a very slim House majority. It looks like it may be 220, 221, not much more than that. But you're done with the Ken Bucks. I think you've really shed most of the people who will cause any problem for moving the president's agenda.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is going to be a very MAGA everything this time around. I mean, and why not? I mean, Trump has got nothing to lose, right? Overall.
Right, he's got nothing to lose. Senate, it may not be all that MAGA. That's going to be a slog.
But I think, I mean, but they have a little at 53. They've got a little bit of a cushion, to get things through. It's a lot better than 51. And you can I think you can corral these people enough on some things, as long as you don't get to be too extreme on something like that. But at least, yeah, I mean, look, if it wasn't Carrie Lake, I just think that, Arizona, you could have found a better candidate. Okay. I mean, I just think that there's got to be somebody, but she's just not the person that's going to win statewide in Arizona. I think I'm not
a Carrie Lake fan. Yeah. That part of what you say, I agree with. She's not a great candidate. She's like the Democrat. She's unctuous. She's preachy. She's tries to come off as morally superior to you. And people don't like that approach, right? The people don't go for that. But the other part of what you said, they could have found a better candidate. Who? That's the problem. It's like,
right.
Blake
I don't know. But
yeah. See, that's, when you get into like who was available in Arizona to win this race, that's kind of a dicier question.
Well, this is where, that's why they needed to convince the former governor to run. But I think,
he's not MAGA.
Right.
That'd be basically a Democrat vote in the Senate.
Well, I mean, he'd be a McCain-ish kind of person, but he'd give you more R votes than D votes. Yeah. I mean, Lake would be, she would give you R votes all the way through. But if you want to win the race and then pad your lead, that's what you do. I mean, it's kind of like Hogan. Hogan would have been in that same area. They would just expanded the pool of those people that would have the Democrats
basically a problem
could peel off, but it would still give you firmer control of the Senate. On the other hand, so yeah, I know, and I don't know, what happened there with Rogers, not enough whatever, and or whether or not Sam Brown was strong enough.
That wasn't a great candidate either.
Yeah, but they did do better overall. I mean, they finally got knocked off Sherrod Brown, and we got rid of Bob Casey, maybe.
Yeah, probably though.
If he will concede.
Yeah, but he's done. There's not enough votes.
That race to me is over with. But he's just like he's just acting not in good faith here at this point in time. It's just so. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see. Let's spend some time here. We could probably the rest of the time almost talking about the cabinet. Trump has been rapid fire on the cabinet appointees, staff appointees. We have Susie Wiles, chief of staff. My wife pointed out to me that she's Pat Summerall's daughter, so I love her already.
That's right, and she's also a fierce operator. Knows how to run these things and fend off enemies, and help politicians. She's very good.
Yeah, and if you look at the Trump campaign, it was actually pretty well run this time. We didn't have this
really well run.
It didn't implode. We didn't have all the backbiting. We've seen this in past elections where they've had changes, they fired people, they do all the things. Susie Wiles kept it together.
Her and La Savita.
Yep, right. They deserve a heck of a lot of credit for getting Trump from start to finish and keeping everything kind of in check. So I look forward to seeing how Susie does and managing the staff. That's a huge responsibility. But we'll see how she does. It's bigger than probably anything she's really, bigger than anything she's done before, but she's got a lot of experience under her belt.
I'm the first woman to hold that job.
Yeah.
The first thing Trump does is break a glass ceiling.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's not like the first transgender to hold that role. It's the first, just on, which would have been something Biden would have done the next time.
Speaking of transgender, let's talk about defense, where 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 they kind of went in the opposite. You had the Millie was a cross dresser. The guy who was in charge of the nuclear safety was a cross-dressing luggage thief. Remember that guy, Sam Britton, or whatever his name is?
That guy gave me the creeps.
Yeah, and then you have Lloyd Austin, with his 7 mask and lying about his surgeries and trying to see how woke they can make everything. They got a guy who was going to muck the stable of woke in the military. Seth. He's a Fox guy.
Yeah. So the question is going to be, I think, is that will he be confirmed? It's so outside the norm. I mean, we do control the Senate.
Right. You only need 51 votes now, or actually 50 because you have Vance.
Right. So the filibuster once again comes back to bite the Democrats.
Good job, Harry Reid.
That's right. It's like, who would know? I mean, Harry Reid, the Supreme Court, Harry Reid, this. I mean, we stand a better chance of getting these people confirmed. I mean, that's probably the only question mark, only because because he's going to get the Democrats are going to rail hard and the media will rail hard because they've already been doing it. Oh, he's a Fox News, host and everything like this. We can do this, but he's a veteran, right?
Well, it's not that he's had 2 combat tours, right? He has 3 Bronze Stars, so he's actually got mud on his boots, right? Yeah. He's actually been in a theater fighting against the enemy, right? In recent years, in recent times, right? So he understands what is the military going through right now? What is it short of? What does it have too much of? What needs to be fixed, right? I love that, the defense contractors are like, who the heck is this guy? Good. I'm glad that you don't know him, right? I'm glad that you're going to have to come to him and present and talk about real value, right? It's not just keep doing what we've always been doing and everything's good, right? You're going to have to show that what you do works and helps, right? A new level of accountability. So, yeah, he's a guy who's going to hold people to account. He has not been a flag officer, but he spent a lot of time studying flag officers as a result of his, he's written some books about it and so forth, and about how the military's leadership has betrayed it. So, it's not that these are not subjects that are foreign to him. And he is, he's brought in to do a particular thing, which is to rebuild the military, manpower and equipment and lethality and readiness, right? To get all those things back to a level where Americans accept it. So, he is there to break some eggs. So I hope that he gets a chance to do it.
Yeah, and if he, to me, with a lot of these leaders, the cabinet people, it's like, yeah, I mean, the buck stops there theoretically with them, but it's the key part of that to me has always been who are their staff people, who are their people that they surround themselves with, that they work with on a daily basis to kind of help pull all this together. Those people have got to be good, and he finds the right people. I mean, defense will look a lot different. Defense has become a very woke department, right? I mean,
and ineffective department, right? They're not getting the job done, and our rivals around the world are figuring that out, right? We're pretty darn vulnerable.
Right. Yeah. So that was just that was I wake up today, I'm like, wow, that was a completely unexpected pick.
But they do realize things have changed.